The prosecution wants new charges against the officers in the Floyd matter. Fourth, charges in the disappearance of an 11-year-old boy in California, Roman Lopez. Fifth, that must be some good chicken and waffles. And finally, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Crime Talk, and my name is Scott Reisch. Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and then also hit that little bell so that you receive notifications of when we go live or put up new content. Now, we have a busy docket today, so let's get right to it. First on the docket, new developments in the Lori Vallow Chad Daybell matter. That's right, the autopsy, the second, autopsy, you should say, as it relates to Tammy Daybell. The second autopsy performed on Tammy Vallow has been completed. Of course, the results have not been released yet, but is it a big break in the case or is it nothing at all? Let's take a look. For those of you who are not familiar with Tammy Daybell and her death was originally ruled natural, but then her body was exhumed for further analysis after suspicion fell on her husband, Chad Daybell, and his new bride, that's right, Lori Vallow, just 2 weeks after her death. Well, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office say that they have received the completed autopsy for Tammy Daybell, the late wife of Chad Daybell, but they declined to release the findings in any way. They said that something would be forthcoming. Now, the contents of this report will not be made public at this time, as it is evidence in an open and ongoing investigation. That's according to the Fremont County Sheriffs. That is not unusual because there is an ongoing investigation. Now, as you may recall, the Fremont County District Attorney asked that the Attorney General oversee this case. Well, the new District Attorney asked that she be allowed to take over this case once again, thereby relieving the Attorney General of the investigation. What could that mean? Could this mean that the newly elected district attorney is out to make a name for herself by prosecuting a high-profile case? Or does it simply mean they're sending it back to the Fremont County? They are going to close their case, and it just makes more sense to have the new district attorney close the matter out. Well, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Mark Means, the attorney for Lori Vallow, immediately took to his Twitter account when asked about the completion of the Tammy Daybell autopsy report, and he simply stated first that his heart goes out to the family, but then you have to ask yourself, why is basically everything so difficult for the defense that you have to ask for the production of evidence, witnesses, and attorney-client recordings taking place? So he's completely rehashing all of the arguments that he's brought before the court and were shot down. Then he says, well, you have to also remember that the Fremont County elected coroner ruled that Mrs. Daybell's death, Tammy Daybell's death, was a death caused by natural causes. And finally, he states that this is nothing more than a nonsensical statement about a media teaser by the newly elected district attorney in an effort to taint the potential jury pool as it relates to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. So obviously no statement has been put out as it relates to the autopsy being completed by Chad Daybell or his attorney, Mr. Pryor, in any way. Now, we do know that there was a phone call at some point where Chad Daybell tells a friend that any possibility of him hurting or harming his wife in any way is just a bunch of crazy conspiracy theories. He stated on that phone call that he begged Tammy to go to the doctor because she was getting weaker, and then she just apparently passed away. We'll have to wait and see, obviously, if charges are filed. I would think that if charges are going to be filed in anything regarding Tammy Daybell, they're going to be filed rather quickly. And when I mean quickly, I would say within the next week. They've had all this time to build a case, the prosecutor has. They were simply waiting on the autopsy. If nothing is filed here within the next week, I would say that there's probably no case as it relates to the death of Tammy Daybell. We'll wait and see, but let's face it, they've had a lot of time to build their case. If they're going to do it, they should be ready to go immediately based upon the autopsy reports. If it was natural causes, then come out and state it immediately. That is just fundamental fairness through and through. Hopefully the district attorney that would be handling that matter is a straight shooter and that she will in fact do that if that is the case. If she's going to file charges, do it sooner rather than later. Next on the docket, there's some good lawyering going on in the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys have filed several attorneys. Some are regarding, hey, count 5 and count 6, we should have severed trials. We need a bill of particulars, which basically says, hey, judge, there's not enough specificity in the charging documents for us to basically know who's the victim, when this took place, and therefore we need more information if you're going to do that. But the biggest motion filed on behalf of Miss Maxwell is a 38-page brief asking for the case to be dismissed. And the reason that they're asking for the case to be dismissed on the behalf of Miss Maxwell is that they claim, Miss Maxwell and her attorneys, that she is subject to the non-prosecution agreement that was put in place by the United States government and that guy named Jeff down in Florida back in 2007. Now, the agreement specifically states the United States agreed it will not institute any criminal charges against potential co-conspirators of that guy named Jeff. The key clause in this non-prosecutorial agreement basically says, it says, in consideration for that guy named Jeff's guilty plea and compensation provided above, that if that guy named Jeff successfully fulfills all the terms and conditions of this agreement, the United States also agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of that guy named Jeff, including, but not limited to, Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, or Nadia Markova. Now, clearly, Ghislaine Maxwell's name does not appear there, but she is not excluded because of the language that says including but not limited to. Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys are going to say, hey, this agreement was signed off on by Mr. Acosta, the prosecuting attorney at the time, but that it went up all the way to the top of the Department of Justice. And to say that this agreement does not apply to Miss Maxwell, who's an alleged co-conspirator now of this guy named Jeff, is complete nonsense. The United States Attorney for the District of New York is saying, hey, that agreement didn't bind our office. That only bound the Southern District of Miami. The United States Attorney prosecuting Miss Maxwell has stated that she is of the opinion that the non-prosecution agreement signed back in 2007 down in the Southern District of Florida is not binding upon her office. I think that it possibly will be. Now, this non-prosecution agreement has already been upheld by appellate courts before when victims tried to go in and have that non-prosecution agreement thrown out, saying they were not notified pursuant to the Victims' Rights Act. And although the district court said you're right, the appellate courts found in a 2-1 decision that pursuant to this non-prosecution agreement, no charges were ever filed in federal court. Therefore, you did not need to be notified under the Victims' Rights Act. Therefore, basically, you have no standing or no ability to say this plea agreement is not valid. I think the strongest argument is the clear, plain language that says the United States government. I think the strongest argument for Ms. Maxwell here is that it simply states the United States also agrees. It does not limit the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. It says the United States. Let's see if the court in this particular case has enough courage to say that that applies to Miss Maxwell. My guess is the court's going to say, no, it doesn't. The appellate courts may disagree. This goes back to that fundamental principle we've talked about before. Words have meanings. They need to be given their plain meaning and effect as written on the paper. You can't change the agreement later down the road. If you want to do that, you need to modify the agreement with all the particular people involved. Next on the docket, the prosecutor wants to add more charges in the cases against the police officers involved in the George Floyd matter. Prosecutors filed a motion asking that the district court judge to reinstate a third-degree murder charge against the former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin and add the same charges against the 3 other former police officers. Back in October of last year, Judge Peter Cahill dropped a third-degree murder charge against Chauvin and the other officers, ruling that the charge can be sustained only in a situation in which the defendant's actions were eminently dangerous to other persons and were not specifically directed at the particular person whose death occurred. District Attorney is saying there has been a recent appellate court decision regarding former Minneapolis police officer Mohammed Noor, who was sentenced in June of 2019, who was found guilty at trial, received a 12.5-year sentence, then appealed that conviction and sentence to the higher court, and the higher court upheld the charge of third-degree murder under very similar circumstances. In that particular case, the charges were third-degree murder and manslaughter. As you may recall, Officer Noor was charged in the fatal shooting death of a woman while responding to her 911 call. Obviously, the trial court level has to follow the appellate court's precedent in this particular case. Sometimes judges simply say, I have ruled, I am not going to change my mind, because some judges think that shows weakness. However, you must follow the precedent. So it would not surprise me in this particular case if the court actually reinstates the third-degree homicide charges. Quick recess, please. Go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. You'll be happy you did. If there's anyone out there you were ever curious about what was in their background, now is the time to do it. If you're going to get involved with somebody, now is the time to do it. When you go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, you put in the name, literally millions of public records are searched, and a report is generated. And it's going to give you a report. If they have multiple social media accounts, you're going to find it. If they have multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, it's going to be found. And more importantly, you're going to get information regarding criminal history. Hopefully the person you're searching has none whatsoever. But if it's there, it's going to be found. You're going to get everything you'd want to know, whether you're going into business or whether you're going into a personal relationship. You're going to be able to find out the information you want to know. So go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up today. You'll be happy you did. Next on the docket, some charges in the disappearance of an 11-year-old boy from California by the name of Roman Lopez. It took over a year for the prosecution to bring charges, but the investigation took some time. So yesterday, police announced that Roman, who was found inside a storage bin in the basement of his family's home, was severely dehydrated and malnourished. On January 11th of 2020, Roman Lopez was reported missing from the family residence. He lived at the home with his biological father, his stepmother, and 7 additional children ranging in the ages of 1 to 17 years old. The family had recently moved to that particular residence, and they moved around a lot, and apparently there was a lot of social services involvement, and it took quite a while for the prosecution to get their case filed. After the investigation, the father, Jordan Piper, and Lindsay Piper, the stepmother, are charged with child abuse under circumstances or conditions likely to produce a great bodily injury or death. This case obviously took some time to put together. What complicates it is when you have basically 9 people living in a home, and yes, they do find a body in a bin down below. How do you prove who put the body there, who caused the harm? We've talked about this before. Identification, being able to say that's the person that committed the crime, is very important. Obviously, it took some time through this investigation, they were able to bring charges. Hopefully some justice there for Roman, but obviously we'll give the parents the presumption of innocence. Next on the docket, that must be some good chicken and waffles. So the police are looking for a gunman who stole, get this, chicken and waffles from Roscoe's House of Chicken and Waffles in Pasadena. Apparently, the unidentified person went up to purchase his chicken and waffles and was asked to leave because he wasn't wearing a face mask. He then returned with a gun and didn't provide any money. That's right, that's an aggravated robbery. Serious charges, must be some very good chicken and waffles. Next on the docket, that's right, it's that time again for our Dumb Criminal Contestant of the Day and a recap of our contestants throughout the week. As you may recall, Monday we had Mr. Ami, who stole a tow truck because that particular tow truck company had towed his car earlier in the year. Tuesday, we had Mr. Stephen Copeland, who said, hey, that's not heroin, that's my laxative. Wednesday, Matt Letham, the man who, that's right, tattooed the outline of the state of Florida smack dab on his forehead. And then we have Joshua Hosington, who drove a car through a house while completely intoxicated, and of course, leaving the car behind after he fled. And today, our dumb criminal contestant is a gentleman by the name of Demetrius Lewis. He appeared before Judge Tabitha Blackman in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for an initial advisement and the setting of bail. Well, Mr. Lewis gets up there and, well, watch this. That's right. Tells the judge how beautiful she is and that he loves her.
Demetrius Lewis on page 26.
My girl, just one yes. How you doing? How you doing?
All right, I'm good, sir. How are you?
Good. Judge, you are so gorgeous, the judge. I just have to tell you, you're gorgeous.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. All right, Mr. Lewis. Flattery will get you everywhere, but maybe not here. The court finds probable cause on count 1, burglary, occupied dwelling, unarmed. Count 2, possession of MDMA ecstasy, and first looks to the state for their recommendation as to bond and any priors.
The judge smiled and said thank you and said flattery will get you everywhere except here. That's right. It didn't matter to the judge that he thought that she was pretty. His bond was still set at $5,000 for the attempted burglary and, of course, possession of ecstasy. So, Mr. Lewis, you get our Dumb Criminal Contestant of the Day award simply for the fact that you took the initiative to try and sweet talk the judge. Good initiative, poor judgment. All right, that wraps it up for today. I hope you had a wonderful week. Have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget to catch our Saturday recap if you haven't had time to watch all of the episodes this week. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next week on Crime Talk.